Hearing the deafening sound of "Kill Me, Baby" blasting from the car stereo, I was like a puppet mechanically reversing the car and stepping on the gas. Reverse again. Floor the accelerator again until oil stains covered the ground. I lit a cigarette. Through the shattered window, I looked at Willow's beautiful yet broken face. She struggled to lift her head from the crushed and deformed driver's seat. Her eyes were filled with despair and a silent scream. I wiped the blood dripping down from my forehead, then gave her a determined smile. The Zippo lighter spinning between my fingers flew toward the fuel tank. Chapter 1. The wind was fierce today. Even the flame of my Zippo flickered like a dying ember, twisting and warping in the gusts. I casually tossed away the cigarette butt and smoothly pulled another cigarette from the pack with my right hand, lighting it from the dying end of the first. The pack was nearly empty. Only one last cigarette remained rattling around all by itself. In the distance, a red sports car was speeding toward me. A few seconds later it flashed past me like a streak of neon. A Ferrari California, the third anniversary gift I had given Willow. Unfortunately, the person sitting in the passenger seat now was probably her precious assistant. Watching the Ferrari's taillights disappear into the distance, I shook my head and swept my wind-blown bangs back. I took out my phone, tapped on that familiar profile picture, and sent her a voice message. Bang! The heavy door of my Ford Raptor slammed shut. I shifted straight into third gear, floored the accelerator, released the clutch, and dropped the handbrake in one fluid motion. The V6 engine let out a deafening tearing roar and the 2.6-ton mechanical beast shot forward like an arrow released from a bow. My right foot might as well have been welded to the gas pedal. In less than 3 minutes, the rear of the Ferrari came into view. I turned on the music and cranked the speakers to full volume. The pounding electronic beat was deafening. Could we stay together forever? Could we always be this happy? True feelings are supposed to be kept hidden. They're a secret. I love you so much I want to kill you. Is it all right for the two of us to keep living like this, like some deranged madman? I screamed along with the music. Shitaru the Raptor pulled up alongside the Ferrari on the left. I honked twice and lowered the passenger side window. The driver's window of the Ferrari slid down. Because of the difference in height between the two vehicles, all I could see was a pair of clear, watery eyes. I had once proudly told Willow that even if I could see nothing but her eyes, I would still recognize her at a glance among a sea of thousands. But now in those eyes I knew better than anyone's there was nothing but fear and guilt. Through the window I looked at the shadowy figure in the Ferrari's passenger seat and silently mouthed, "Goodbye, Willow." Chapter 2. I jerked the wheel sharply to the right. The heavy front end of the Raptor slammed straight into the Ferrari's side. The frenzied music drowned out the sound of the impact. My face stayed blank, my right foot welded to the gas pedal. The Ferrari instantly spun out of control and crashed straight into the guardrail. From where I sat, everything seemed to slow down. I could clearly see the Ferrari's front end twisting, crumpling, shards flying everywhere. In less than a second it bounced off the guardrail again, spinning before coming to a sideways stop more than 10 meters away. Something warm trickled down from my temple. I wiped it away with one hand, brushing a few loose strands of hair back at the same time. Through the speakers the music from "Kill Me, Baby" was still screaming hysterically. I floored the gas again and drove straight at the Ferrari's driver's side. Bang! The crash came and the Ferrari's windows shattered in an instant. I shoved the Ferrari hard against the guardrail. Reverse. Gas. Shift. Pedal to the floor. The Raptor roared and rammed into it again. Over and over. Until the Ferrari was crushed into a heap of scrap metal. My fingers trembled slightly as I pinched the last cigarette out of the pack. After the collision, the cigarette had already been bent completely out of shape. Breathing hard, I clenched it between my lips, pushed open the door, and stepped out. A slender arm hung limply from the Ferrari's driver's seat. Through the shattered window, Willow had her head tilted to one side, staring stubbornly in my direction. Even with her face covered in blood, I could still imagine how bright and beautiful that face had once been. I looked into those eyes I knew best, now filled with regret and despair. Her chin quivered as if she were trying to say something. Too bad. I tilted my head and tapped it a few times. All I could hear now was a constant ringing in my ears. In a gentle voice I said, "Didn't I tell you it's cold down there? You should have worn more." I smiled at her. "Don't be scared. It'll be over soon." The rear of the Ferrari was completely gone by now, and gasoline had spread all over the ground. I took one last deep drag. The final third of the cigarette burned away in an instant. Ha! Slowly I exhaled the smoke. Willow, in your next life, don't make promises so easily. What if someone as stupid as me actually believes you? Click. The Zippo spun once between my fingers in a neat little flourish. I raised my hand and threw it forward. Boom! In the violent explosion, I lost consciousness. Chapter 3. A woman's voice came through the phone. Hubby, it's only a few scrapes. Nothing serious. A kind stranger has already taken me to the hospital. You don't need to worry too much. Sitting in the back seat of the Maybach, I ended the call and slowly gathered my thoughts. So this was the day Willow had gotten into the car accident. I had cancelled a business negotiation overseas and flown home overnight. As we passed a hardware store, I called out to the driver. Pull over. Mr. Wong. The driver moved to get out with me. No need. I waved him off and entered the hardware store alone. 5 minutes later, I returned to the back seat, clutching my sleeve as I leaned back. Do you have any cigarettes? The driver nodded. Yes. He pulled a pack from inside his jacket and handed it to me. Let's go. Take me to the hospital. When I pushed open the door to the hospital room, Willow was leaning against the raised bed with gauze wrapped around her forehead. The moment she saw me, her expression turned aggrieved. She held out both arms toward me. Hubby, it hurts. I almost never got to see you again. I hurried over, sat beside her, and took her delicate hand in mine. Willow, I'm back. She nodded softly and nestled into my arms. The next second the door flew open with a bang. Miss Liu. A hurried figure burst into the room. I turned and saw a handsome young man standing in the doorway holding a cup of hot water. When he saw Willow, Liu, and me embracing, he froze for a moment. Hubby. Willow lifted her head from my chest. He's the kind stranger who pulled me out of the wreck. I stood and casually took the cup from the young man's hands. With a smile, I said, Mr. Ito, thank you for coming to her rescue. I placed the cup on the bedside table and helped Willow settle back against the pillows. Willow, get some rest. I'm going to properly thank the man who saved your life. Okay. After the shock of the accident, my arrival had allowed Willow to finally relax. Exhaustion immediately washed over her. Get some sleep, I said. She nodded. Okay. Hubby, you have to come back soon. I can't sleep when you're not beside me. Don't worry. I gently tucked her hair behind her ear and smiled. I'll be right back. Then I turned toward Makoto, who stood awkwardly by the door, and said without expression, Let's go, Mr. Ito. Chapter 4. Makoto and I walked toward the stairwell, one behind the other. I held out the pack of cigarettes. Want one, thanks. He pulled out a cigarette and expertly tucked it between his fingers. I placed one between my lips as well. I forgot my lighter. Mind giving me a light, Mr. Ito? The flame flickered as I took a deep drag. Cough, cough. I suddenly broke into a violent coughing fit. Then I held out my hand. Let's formally introduce ourselves. George Wong, Willow's husband. A strange glint flashed through Makoto's eyes before he hurriedly replied, Oh, hello. I'm Ito. His voice trailed off. After a moment of stunned silence, he asked, You know me, Mr. Wong? Heh. I nodded with a smile. Makoto Ito. I've known about you for a very long time. The fire door closed behind me. The tightly sealed door not only kept the smell of smoke trapped inside the stairwell, but also concealed the walls covered in vivid red. Holding my cuff between my fingers, I calmly made my way back into the hospital room. Willow lay on her side on the bed, staring at the doorway with wide, expectant eyes. Hubby, what took you so long? Where's Makoto? I sat down gently beside her, cupped her face with one hand, and slowly caressed it. Don't worry. Makoto has already gone down. My fingers traced her delicate eyebrows, the straight bridge of her nose, and her soft lips before continuing downward and finally stopping against the side of her neck. My palm was warm, and Willow nuzzled into it like a kitten. Hubby, why do you smell like smoke? Oh, Mr. Ito smoked a cigarette just now. The smell probably got onto my coat. Willow frowned. Then take your coat off, hubby. You know I hate the smell of cigarettes more than anything. Willow. What is it? I gently lifted her chin and met her gaze with a smile in my eyes. Would you ever keep a lighter in your purse so someone else could smoke more conveniently? She answered as though it were obvious. Of course not. Hubby, you know how much I hate smoking. No exceptions, not even for me. That's right, no exceptions. Not even for you, hubby. Hearing her answer, I rubbed her head as though praising a pet that had done exactly as it was told. My right hand quietly released my cuff. My left hand slowly moved over her mouth and nose. Chapter 5. A gleam flickered. Clink. The sound of glasses touching pulled me back to myself. Candlelight, roses, red wine. Willow sat across from me in an evening gown breathtakingly beautiful. Happy anniversary, hubby. It was our 3rd wedding anniversary. It was also the last anniversary we would ever celebrate together. Willow rose gracefully and walked over to me. Your anniversary gift. She fastened an exquisite watch around my wrist. Where's my gift, hubby? She gazed at me with smiling eyes like an obedient child eagerly waiting for a present. I gently pushed the box containing the Ferrari key toward her. Do you like it? Surprise lit up her eyes. She threw herself into my arms, lifted her face, and kissed me on the lips. Thank you, hubby. I'll practice my driving so I can take you out for a ride. The passenger seat will always belong to you. I wrapped an arm around her soft waist and leaned slightly closer, a faint, unreadable smile on my lips. It'll always belong to me, she nodded. Yes. You're the only one who will ever sit in the passenger seat. Her answer was firm and absolute. Not even your parents, not even our future child. That's right. No one else. It's a special seat reserved only for you, Willow. I like that answer. I gently rested my forehead against hers, then covered her eyes with a silk scarf. Sit still. I have one more surprise for you. I'll go get it from the kitchen. Chapter 6. The gleam flashed again. Our wedding night. After seeing off the guests who had stayed behind to tease the newlyweds, I stood on the terrace, gazing into the distance. Hubby! Willow wrapped her arms around me from behind. I finally married you, Willow. I turned around, took her hand, and led her to the edge of the terrace. Could you say your wedding vows one more time, huh? Willow turned slightly and looked up at me. The cool moonlight spilled across her face, and my reflection filled her eyes. I want to hear them again. Will you repeat them for me? A shy smile curved Willow's lips as she leaned into my embrace. Hubby, from now on our world will belong only to the two of us. No storm will ever tear us apart. We'll stay together forever. I love you, hubby. I nodded gently and smiled at her. That was beautiful. But in your next life, don't ever say it again. Then came the sudden sensation of weightlessness. All that remained in her eyes was terror. The gleam flashed by. 18 years old. Willow pressed herself tightly against my chest. Geo, her eyes still glistened with the tears she had shed in the throes of passion. From now on I belong to you and no one else. We'll be together forever and ever. I lifted her into my arms and carried her toward the bathroom. The young woman's delicate body lay limp and boneless in my embrace. I gently lowered her into the bathtub and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Thank you, Willow. But you really shouldn't use words like forever anymore. Why not? I did not answer. I merely smiled at her as the warmth in my eyes slowly hardened into bone-deep ice. Then in the next instant, the hands cradling her face suddenly forced her beneath the water. Flash. 15 years old. On a bridge above the river, the girl's hair danced in the evening breeze. Willow's cheeks were flushed as she rose onto her toes and brushed her lips lightly against mine. Geo, I like you. I looked at her young yet resolute face and smiled. How much do you like me so much? I wish the whole world knew how much I like you. All right. I supported her slender waist and helped her climb onto the railing. Then tell the whole world. Shout as loudly as you can that you like me. I could feel Willow's long legs trembling beneath my hands. Geo. The evening wind scattered her voice. But when she saw the encouragement in my eyes, she resolutely straightened her back. She cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted toward the river, the distant sunset, and the vast sky. I like George. Who likes George? The first asked. Willow likes George. The hands holding her legs steady quietly loosened. I tilted my head up at her. How much do you like him? So much I'll love him for the rest of my life. Willow bent down and shouted until her voice turned hoarse. The rest of your life. The corner of my mouth curled into a contemptuous smile. Willow, your entire lifetime would last only another 10 years. I gave her a gentle push. I watched her fall like a withered leaf, her eyes filled with despair and incomprehension. The girl who had finally overcome her shyness and confessed her love to the boy she adored. The girl who had conquered her fear and stood on that narrow railing proclaiming her love to the entire world, was met with a sudden betrayal from the person she loved most. Chapter 7. From somewhere high above, a faint current of suppressed anger rumbled through the heavens. Heh! I swung myself onto the railing, looked up at the sky, and raised my middle finger. What can you possibly do to me? Stop wasting your time with these pointless tricks. No matter how many chances you give me, I will never change. The river stretched endlessly beneath me. I closed my eyes and took a leap of faith. The gleam did not flicker again. I plunged into boundless darkness. Why? A voice echoed through the void. I gave you so many chances. You could have changed the ending. I curled my lips in disdain. Why should I change it? The voice reverberated inside my mind. She merely lost her way for a moment. Aren't all the sweet memories you shared worth giving her one chance to be forgiven? Heh! I pressed a hand against my chest, my gaze turning icy. Those sweet memories you speak of only remind me again and again of how despicable she was and how completely she betrayed me to her. Every chance you give is a new future. But to me it is merely the past repeating itself. You chose to let me keep my memories, so every version of that past becomes another blade driven straight into my heart. So tell me, how am I supposed to forgive her? The voice remained silent for a long time before finally replying in a low tone. What if I erased your memories? I laughed. Would that make any difference? I'd simply be forced to watch the same ending happen all over again. No voice answered me after that. I drifted through the endless void with no sense of how much time had passed. Chapter 8. Geo, hurry up! The darkness vanished, and once again I felt solid ground beneath my feet. A pair of soft little hands tugged me forward as we ran. Hurry, hurry, it's about to rain. We stopped at the crosswalk. I looked at Willow standing before me with her hair tied into two little pigtails. She carried a cake box in one hand and held on to me with the other, her forehead covered in sweat from running. As I watched the traffic stream past us, my hand had unknowingly come to rest against her back. Geo, do you like this cake? Willow suddenly raised the box like she was proudly presenting a treasure and held it out in front of me. Happy 10th birthday. Boom. Distant agonizing memories suddenly flooded into my mind. The hand resting against Willow's back quietly dropped to my side. The light turned green. I suddenly broke into a run, racing in the direction of home. Geo, wait for me. Behind me, Willow desperately tried to catch up. But nothing else mattered to me anymore. Home. Home was the only place I wanted to go. I sprinted around the corner, tore through the entrance of the apartment complex, and raced all the way up to the 5th floor without stopping. Bang, 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 I pounded on the door with all my strength. Who is it? I'm coming. A gentle woman's voice came from inside. The door opened. The moment I saw my mother's warm, familiar face from my memories, my knees gave out beneath me. I collapsed to the floor. Mom, I missed you so much. Kneeling there, I wrapped my arms around her legs and sobbed until my entire body convulsed. Chapter 9. Oh, sweetheart, what happened to you? At that moment, I was lying in my mother's arms. As she wiped away my tears, she apologized awkwardly to the people beside us. Old Lou, I'm so sorry. I have no idea what got into George today. He actually left Willow all alone on the street. While apologizing to Willow's father, she gave me a hard tap on the forehead. Willow stood nearby, her eyes red from crying as she glared at me indignantly. Her father looked at Willow's swollen eyes, then at me with tears and snot streaming down my face before chuckling. It's fine. The two kids probably just had a little argument. I lifted my head slightly from my mother's arms and looked around the home preserved in my memories. My father was cooking in the kitchen, while Willow's mother helped plate the dishes. Her father called cheerfully toward the kitchen. Wong, you'd better make us a few proper dishes. We're having a few more drinks tonight. Today was Willow's and my 10th birthday. It was also the turning point of my entire life. Willow and I had been born on the same day. Our families had been close for generations. From the time we were in diapers through kindergarten and into elementary school, Willow and I had never been apart. Childhood sweethearts, inseparable since we were little. A few years earlier, my father and Willow's father had gone into business together, bringing our two families even closer. Pitter-patter. Raindrops began striking the windows. It's raining, Willow's father said as he stood and glanced outside. My father tossed the wok a couple of times with a loud clang before turning back with a grin. Don't worry. The food's almost ready. Everyone was in high spirits. Even Willow, who had been sobbing moments earlier, was now happily playing with my collectible figures. Only the rain kept falling harder and harder. Chapter 10. After several rounds of drinks, Willow and I blew out the candles together and cut the cake. Willow carried a slice over to my mother. "Here you go, Auntie." "Thank you, Willow." My mother smiled and stroked her hair. Nearby, Willow's father winked meaningfully at mine. "Wong, it looks like your brat is going to get the better end of the deal someday." My father looked at me, then at Willow, and raised his glass again with a guileless grin. "Haha, no need for words. Cheers." The adults burst into laughter. 10-year-old Willow leaned against me without fully understanding what they meant, but she laughed along with them anyway. Outside, the wind was howling and the rain was pouring down. Raindrops pounded against the windows, merging into wild, twisting streams across the glass. Willow's father looked outside with concern. "Wong, is anyone on duty at the factory right now? What about the cotton yarn in the warehouse?" Hearing that, my father stood as well and studied the storm through the window. "It doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. I'm worried the place might flood." Willow's father and mine spoke at almost the same time. "I'll go check the factory." My mother rolled her eyes at them. "Check what? You've both had so much to drink." "I'd have to drive you there myself." "Dad, Uncle Lou, you should have some tea," I said. I picked up their cups and headed toward the kitchen. Willow's father watched me walk away and laughed. "Well, look at that. George is growing up." Crash! A scream rang out together with the sound of shattering glass. When the adults rushed into the kitchen, they found me sprawled on the floor. A shard of glass had sliced open my palm, and blood was everywhere. Everyone immediately descended into panic. My mother hurriedly threw on her coat and searched for the car keys. My father scooped me into his arms and pressed a piece of gauze firmly against my wound. "Old Lou, I'll take George to the hospital first. Call the staff on duty at the factory and ask them to check things over." "Uncle Lou," I called. I lifted my head from my father's arms, held back my tears, and gave him an innocent smile. The ceiling light shone over my father's broad shoulder, dazzling my eyes. I buried the left side of my face in shadow and spoke in the young childish voice I still had before puberty. "I'm sorry, Uncle Lou. I'm so useless. I've delayed something important." I looked at him. "The rain is too heavy. You should wait until tomorrow before going to the factory." My mother finished putting on her shoes and hurried over. "You should worry about yourself first." Then she turned to Willow's father. "Old Lou, George has a point. You should go tomorrow instead." Heh! My gaze passed over Willow's parents, then over Willow herself. Finally, I weakly buried my face in my father's chest. But Willow's father was an incredibly stubborn man. Chapter 11. On my 10th birthday, rain poured from the sky. My father and Willow's father were worried about the cotton yarn stored in the warehouse. Late that night, my mother drove the three of them through the storm to inspect the factory. What cruel timing! They were caught in a flash flood and mudslide. My parents died. Willow's father barely escaped with his life. I lost my home. From that moment on, I was the only person left in my world. Willow, had you never entered my world and pulled me out of that abyss, perhaps I could have struggled my way out on my own. But you built me a new home only to destroy it with your own hands. So how could you possibly expect me not to hate you? A rainy night. An elevated highway. Wheels speeding through the storm. I curled up in the back seat against my father's chest and stared through the window at the curtain of rain. There was no childish innocence left in my eyes, only a cold, sinister darkness. Willow's parents had certainly treated me well. But Willow hell was far too dark. I had lost my way a long time ago. By dawn the rain had stopped. Willow's parents had not returned all night. When the three of us came home, we saw Willow crouched outside the door with her knees hugged to her chest. Alone and abandoned. Just like I had once been. Hearing our footsteps, she raised her tearful eyes. "Auntie, I can't reach Mom or Dad." The scene felt painfully familiar. Back then I had stood barefoot beneath Willow's father's guilt-stricken gaze before collapsing to the floor. This time the news was confirmed, while my father paced anxiously back and forth and my mother whispered prayers under her breath. Willow's parents were dead. Willow fainted. My parents arranged their funerals and brought Willow into our home. Just as her parents had once done for me. From then on I had a little shadow trailing behind me everywhere like a starving puppy begging for scraps. How ironic. Chapter 12. My parents told me to treat Willow well. I believed I treated her very well. I taught her how to play video games, secretly brought her girls manga, and even did all her homework for her. At school I made the kind of melodramatic declaration only an edgy teenager would make. Willow was my one untouchable weakness. Anyone who dared use her family tragedy against her would get beaten so badly they would never be able to take care of themselves again. See, wasn't I good to her? With my subtle guidance and carefully planted suggestions, the family business prospered more and more. During the summer when I was 16, I took Willow on a trip to the neighboring province. Across the street, a good-looking young man approached with a backpack over his shoulders, walking in a hurry. He looked as though he was heading to a cram school. What a diligent student! He could not even wait for the traffic light and rushed straight into the intersection. Willow! I pointed at the boy and asked softly, "Do you think he's handsome?" Willow held my hand cautiously and looked up at him with a timid glance. "No. Gio is the most handsome person in my eyes." I clicked my tongue. "Really, I thought you might like his type." "I won't, Gio. I'll only ever love you." At her answer, I laughed softly, my fingers slowly caressing her waist. I believe you." My tone was casual. Accidents always struck without warning. Just like the deaths of Willow's parents. Just like the boy in front of us who had run a red light and crossed outside the crosswalk. A massive truck suddenly barreled into the intersection. The boy's body folded unnaturally on impact and flew through the air before slamming into the ground more than 10 meters away. Willow froze, utterly stunned by the sight. I took a cigarette from my pocket and placed it between my lips. Light. Still dazed, she pulled out a Zippo, shielded the flame from the wind, and carefully lit my cigarette. Huff! I took a deep drag, then exhaled a sharp stream of smoke directly into Willow's face. Extending my index finger, I wiped away a drop of bright red blood that had splattered onto her cheek, and gently slipped my finger between her lips. "Let's go." I took Willow's hand and led her away in another direction. I sighed. Then, as casually as if we were discussing the weather, I said, "Without that accident, perhaps this boy would have gotten into a good university someday. Perhaps after graduating, he might have unexpectedly saved a beautiful woman's life. Perhaps that woman would have started seeing him differently because he had saved her. Then she might have slowly fallen for him and abandoned the childhood sweetheart she married. Willow, do you think something like that could happen? Perhaps the accident had been too horrifying." Willow moved like a puppet, holding my hand and following mechanically at my side. Maybe. Her reply was faint and numb. Chapter 13. 18 years old. High school graduation. In the end, we still went to the same city. In the stillness of midnight, the room was thick with the scent of sex. Willow lay limp over the chair. I gently unfastened the collar around her neck, brushed my fingers across her shoulder, and said softly, "Go clean yourself up. I'm meeting some friends for drinks, so I won't be staying with you." Gio, just as I opened the door to leave, Willow suddenly wrapped her arms around me from behind. "Gio, you'll marry me, won't you? Ha!" I turned around, lifted her chin between my fingers, and asked with a smile, "What, afraid I'll abandon you?" She gently took my finger into her mouth and whispered, "Gio, you're all I have." Her soft tongue curled around my finger. I narrowed my eyes slightly and said, "Don't overthink it. We still have a long future ahead of us." Bang! The door slammed shut. Willow covered her face, leaned against the wall, and slowly sank to the floor. 20 years old. My birthday. Carrying the scent of an unfamiliar perfume, I returned to Willow just as the clock struck midnight. Seeing her sitting at the dining table, I asked impatiently, "Why are you still awake? I was waiting for you to come back so we could blow out the candles." She nervously handed me a gift. A watch. "Willow, your taste really never changes." I casually tossed the watch box onto the sofa and pulled a bank card from my wallet. "Here. I forgot to prepare a gift. Happy birthday." I did not even bother hiding the indifference in my voice. Before she could react, I walked over to the table and blew out the candles in one breath. I pinched the bridge of my nose. "All right. I'm a little tired, so I'm going to take a shower. You can eat the cake yourself." George. Willow grabbed my hand and said in a trembling voice, "I'm pregnant again." I clicked my tongue softly. "And you want to keep it?" Willow nodded gently. "Get rid of it." My voice was cold, utterly devoid of emotion. Willow pressed her lips together. I won't." What? My gaze suddenly turned sharp. Willow shielded her lower abdomen and slowly backed away one step at a time. She shook her head desperately as tears spilled from her eyes. "George, why?" Willow choked out. "Why are you treating me like this?" I raised an eyebrow. "Like this, like what?" Suddenly I laughed and slowly walked toward her. My warm, strong palm cupped her face. "Don't I treat you well? Ever since you came to live with my family when you were 10, I've given you everything you wanted. Isn't that enough?" Willow clung greedily to my hand, her tears soaking my palm. "But George, you don't have a heart. There's nothing inside you. You hate me, I can feel it. But I don't understand. George, what did I ever do wrong to make you hate me this much, so much that you're even willing to destroy yourself just to hurt me?" Chapter 14. For a fleeting moment, a distant look crossed my eyes. It vanished almost instantly, but she caught it. "George, please tell me. What did I do wrong?" She clung tightly to me, burying her face against my chest. "Willow." I took out a cigarette. Almost instinctively, she leaned closer and lit it for me. I exhaled a cloud of blue-gray smoke into her face. "Do you like it when I smoke?" I asked. "I do." I raised a hand. "No, you don't." After a brief pause, I added, "At least you don't like it when I smoke. The company is preparing to shoot a movie." I abruptly changed the subject. "I want you to play the female lead. Once the movie is finished, perhaps some of your questions will finally be answered." I rested my forehead against hers, my voice soft and tender. After a moment of hesitation, she replied, "All right." I did not continue forcing her to terminate the pregnancy, and Willow finally felt a little more at ease. I gently traced her brows and eyes, then tenderly wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes. The next second, I asked Willow, "Do you still remember the car accident when you were 15? She nodded softly and looked at me questioningly. I enunciated every word. "Remember this. That child's name was Makoto." With that, I turned and walked toward the bathroom without waiting for her response. "It's late. Go to bed." They were words of concern, yet all Willow could feel was an icy chill. Chapter 15. Willow went to the film set and received the first half of the script. Judging from the script, it was a sweet romance about two childhood sweethearts. The male lead, David, lost both his parents in an accident when he was young and moved in with the family of Freya, his childhood sweetheart. Their innocent childhood affection gradually blossomed into mutual love during adolescence. From the age of 10 to 25, they journeyed from school uniforms to wedding attire, their hearts always closely entwined. Everything was as sweet and beautiful as a fairy tale. Willow secretly longed for such a future. This was exactly how she had always imagined her love story with George. David, the male lead, was gentle and ambitious, and his entire heart belonged to Freya. Willow read about their sweet confession at 15, their tight embrace at 18, their warm and loving college life at 20, and their lavish wedding at 22. When she read the wedding vows in the script, it felt as though they had been written especially for her. The story in the script was like a beautiful dream. A perfect love story between her and George in a parallel world. A month passed. I summoned my assistant and asked, "How is the filming coming along, Mr. Wong?" "They've already reached the wedding anniversary scenes." I turned my tall executive chair around and looked at the sky outside the window. Only moments ago the sun had been shining brightly, but now thick clouds had swallowed the sky. It was going to rain. Chapter 16. When I returned to the house, Willow had already prepared dinner and was sitting at the dining table waiting for me. I casually hung my suit jacket on the coat rack and asked, "Is filming the movie fun, It's very interesting." Willow looked at me as though she wanted to say something but hesitated. "What is it?" I asked. Lately, I had been dividing my time between the company and school while she had been staying on set. We had not seen much of each other. "The male lead," she said. "He feels a lot like you." "Like me?" I laughed, took out a cigarette, lit it, and asked, "Does he smoke?" As she watched me blow a perfect smoke ring with practiced ease, Willow silently lowered her head. "No, he doesn't." "Then he hasn't become me yet." Willow looked puzzled. "What, nothing?" I stubbed out the cigarette. "Let's eat." "Geo, the script." Willow stood up and served me a bowl of soup. "I still haven't received the rest of the script." "Don't worry about it." I waved dismissively, lifted the bowl, and took a sip. It tasted good, something I had never tried before. "The movie is being written as it's filmed." My assistant will deliver the later scenes to you on time." Silence followed. After dinner, Willow looped her arm through mine and rested her head against my shoulder. "Gio," she gently stroked her lower abdomen and asked with a trace of hope in her voice, "it's already been 2 months. Would you like to feel the baby?" "I still have work to do," I interrupted. I shrugged her off, stood up, and headed toward the study. "I'll probably be working late. You don't need to wait for me. Go to bed early." Bang! The study door closed. A teardrop fell onto the back of Willow's hand. "George, why?" she murmured. Chapter 17. The next day, Willow noticed an unfamiliar face had joined the production. "Who is he?" Willow quietly asked her assistant. "He's the second male lead. You'll have scenes together." The assistant handed Willow the neatly organized script for that day. Willow quickly flipped through it. "Macatini?" she asked in confusion. In the day's script, the second male lead was named Macatini, and he had once saved the female lead's life. Seeing the sudden addition of so many scenes involving him, Willow felt an intense sense of unease rise inside her. Day after day passed, and the story continued to unfold. Makoto. When Willow saw the second male lead's name in the latest script, her pupils contracted violently. She covered her mouth and murmured, "How could this be?" In the script, Freya brought Makoto into the company to repay him for saving her life. Willow suddenly felt dizzy. She remembered the name I had once mentioned. "Do you remember the boy from the car accident? His name was Makoto." From that day onward, Freya and Makoto shared more and more scenes. Their relationship progressed from co-workers to friends, and then to confidants who told each other everything. What had originally been an entirely platonic relationship gradually began to take on an ambiguous, flirtatious undertone. "Cut!" the director called out loudly. "Willow, the look in your eyes is wrong. This scene is the turning point in your relationship with Makoto. When you look at him, there has to be love in your eyes. You have to look deeply in love with him." "Director, I can't do it." Willow covered her face and sat down in a chair, shaking her head desperately. "I can't act this out, director." "Doesn't Freya's character change far too drastically?" she asked. "She clearly loves David so much. How could she become inappropriately involved with Makoto? She clearly hates the smell of cigarettes. Why would she carry a lighter in her bag just for Makoto? The front passenger seat was supposed to belong only to David. How could she let Makoto sit there? The director merely shrugged noncommittally. "Love doesn't follow logic. It can even break through the boundaries of morality and ethics." Willow choked back a sob and whispered, "No. That isn't love." Seeing that Willow appeared to be on the verge of an emotional breakdown, the director had no choice but to suspend that scene for the time being. He told the assistant to take good care of Willow, then turned his attention to filming David's scenes instead. Chapter 18. "Willow, are you feeling any better?" Her assistant handed her a tissue. Willow pressed her lips together and said, "Yes, a little. I'm sorry for holding everyone up. Let me walk with you for a while." The assistant reached out and helped Willow to her feet. Over on the other side, filming for David's scene had already begun. Willow stood up and walked to the edge of the set. David had his head lowered as though he were gathering his emotions. Slowly, ever so slowly, he raised his head. In the close-up shot, the expression in his eyes shifted little by little, from tenderness to pain. In the end, every trace of emotion gradually faded away, leaving behind nothing but an unreadable calm. He pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and stared at it for a long time. Finally he took one out and placed it between his lips. The set fell completely silent. Everyone was absorbed in David's performance, and the only sound left in the air was the metallic click of his Zippo lighter. David's hand trembled. He struck the flint several times before finally producing a flame. Whoosh! He took a deep drag, then immediately began coughing violently. He coughed so hard that his entire body doubled over, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. And yet he still finished the cigarette one drag at a time. He smoked while coughing and coughed while smoking. When the first cigarette burned out, David straightened up and lit another. This time he did not cough. A sharp stream of smoke shot from his mouth like an arrow. "So that's all it is," he said. David's voice was low, and his entire presence had transformed. He had become cold, ruthless, and incapable of affection. Boom! The sight before her struck Willow's mind like a sudden clap of thunder. At that moment, David's figure overlapped perfectly with George's. She remembered what George had asked her that day. Like me does he smoke? No, oh. Then he hasn't become me yet. Chapter 19. No. That can't be. It's impossible. Willow's face turned deathly pale as she kept backing away. That isn't me. That isn't us. That can't possibly be us. A wave of dizziness swept over her. Her legs gave way and she fell backward. Willow the assistant's face changed in alarm and she rushed forward to catch her. Willow said in a trembling voice, "Take me to George. I need to see him. I need to see him right now." The set descended into chaos as the assistant hurriedly helped Willow into the car. When I received the assistant's call, I was not surprised. Instead, I felt an eerie sense of calm. All right, I understand. Take her back to the house and keep her calm. I'll be there soon. After hanging up, I smiled soundlessly. Love never followed reason. It could even disregard morality and ethics. When I pushed open the door, the assistant was softly comforting Willow. Seeing me enter, she greeted me respectfully. "Mr. Wang. Thank you for your help. You can go home and rest." The assistant nodded and carefully closed the door behind her. The enormous villa instantly fell silent. I looked around. This place was merely a residence. It was not a home. Willow knelt on the sofa with her head resting against a cushion, her eyes hollow and unfocused. Was filming the movie fun? I asked her the same question again. At the sound of my voice, a faint spark returned to her eyes. "Gio, that wasn't us, was it? Ha!" I chuckled and sat down opposite Willow, smoothly taking out a cigarette and lighting it. "Why would you think it might be us? It was too similar, George. He was too much like you." "Which version of him?" I asked. "The one who smoked or the one who didn't? Both of them were you, George. They were both you." Willow spoke urgently. "I felt as though every version of him was you." I nodded and asked, "You think David is me? Then what about Freya? Is she you?" "No." Willow shook her head desperately. "I could never be Freya. I would never betray you." I tilted my head back, a wide smile spreading across my face. "So you believe Freya betrayed David?" I paused before continuing, "but Freya never physically cheated on him. She only let Makoto sit in the front passenger seat. She only endured the smell of cigarettes she hated and carried a lighter for Makoto. Why do you still think Freya betrayed him?" "Willow, tell me why." With a deafening crash, I hurled the crystal ashtray onto the floor. Shards scattered everywhere, leaving the room in complete disarray. I stood and advanced toward Willow, one step at a time. "I wrote the script. I am David. You are Freya. And Makoto is Makoto. You guessed correctly. This is our story, Willow." I stopped in front of her and bent my tall frame over her. My right hand opened and closed around her slender neck. The veins on the back of my hand bulged as my grip tightened little by little. "No. Don't, George. Freya isn't me. She isn't me. I'm still carrying your child, George. Please don't." She protected her abdomen with both hands and looked up at me, tears pouring from her beautiful eyes. Chapter 20. Her eyes were filled with doubt, pleading, and reluctance to let go. "Willow," I whispered gently beside her ear, "we've both already died once. The script tells the story of our previous life. You drove the car I gave you with Makoto beside you, saying you were going abroad with him so he could receive treatment. On the highway to the airport, I rammed my car into yours and crushed you, Makoto, and the vehicle into one mangled wreck, leaving the two of you inseparable forever. You must have been delighted to die that way. After all, you got to die beside the person you loved most." My tender words struck Willow like a bolt from the blue. Her eyes widened in terror. She clung to my forearm and pleaded desperately, "No, George. That wasn't me. That was Freya. She is her and I am me. I would never betray you." "It's too late, Willow," I said expressionlessly. "Just as you said, I hate you so much that I don't even want to spare myself." My fingers tightened little by little. Willow's face had already turned crimson from suffocation, and she weakly pounded against my arm. "Gio, don't do anything foolish. You still have your parents." "Ha!" I slowly exhaled, and a trace of clarity returned to my bloodshot eyes. My grip loosened slightly, and Willow immediately began coughing violently. I sighed helplessly. "Willow, Willow, what am I supposed to do with you? My parents are still alive. I have people I care about now, and I've started wanting to live a proper life." I gently stroked her face. So could you quietly disappear from my world, or you could find some deserted place and go join Makoto in the afterlife. After all, he's already been waiting for you there for 5 years. Gio. Willow threw herself into my arms, greedily absorbing my warmth. I abruptly stood and flung her back onto the sofa. Answer me, Willow, die, or disappear. My absolute resolve extinguished the last flicker of hope in Willow's heart. Protecting her belly with both hands, she knelt on the sofa and stared silently at me for a very long time. Gio. Willow wiped away her tears and spoke softly. I'm sorry. I believe what you said about our previous life because hatred never comes from nowhere. I apologize to you on behalf of the person I once was. Through the script I could feel your despair. If your parents had truly passed away, I would have been your only family. I'm sorry that after giving you hope, I destroyed it with my own hands. What happened to me in the end was my own doing. I'm sorry I dragged you down with me. Gio, for the sake of all the years we grew up together, could you grant me one request? She gently took my hand, lifted her head, and looked at me expectantly. When I did not refuse, a faint smile appeared on Willow's face. She guided my hand onto her belly. She already has a heartbeat, she said. I want her to feel her father's warmth. As Willow continued to smile, tears streamed down her face. Chapter 21. After that day, I never saw Willow again. The movie was left without an ending as well. And so the days passed quietly. I thought that once my parents eventually passed away, I would finally be able to leave this world in peace too. But then, 1 year later, police officers brought a baby girl to me. Mr. Wong, this is your daughter with Ms. Willow. In the officer's arms, a tiny rosy-cheeked baby was sucking on her finger. Her large eyes blinked as she gazed curiously at me. Where is she? I asked. The officer fell silent for a moment. Ms. Willow has passed away. She took her own life. Before she died, she called us and asked us to bring the child to you. I turned my head away, my fingers suddenly clenching into a fist. Huh. You went looking for Makoto yourself down there and dumped this burden on me, Mr. Wong. The officer held the child out toward me. My body trembled slightly. I reached out, took her, and cradled her in my arms. Does she have a name? I asked. On the child's birth certificate, Ms. Willow only left a nickname, Ava. Ava. I softly murmured the name as I looked down at the tiny bundle in my arms. Ms. Liu also left you a letter. The officer placed an envelope on the table beside me. We'll leave you alone now, Mr. Wong. I gave a slight nod in thanks. After everyone left, the only sound in the room was Ava blowing little bubbles of saliva. Holding her in my arms, I opened Willow's final letter. Her handwriting was messy, nowhere near as neat and elegant as it had been in our previous life. George, by the time you read this letter, I will already be gone. Please forgive me for selfishly bringing Ava into this world, only to abandon my responsibilities and leave her behind. Ava carries on your bloodline. Without Ava, I fear that once your parents are gone, you will no longer have any reason to remain in this world. So even if it is only for Ava's sake, please hold on in this mortal world a little longer. There is still one last thing I want to tell you. George the First love you. I am Willow, the Willow who still loves you. Huh. How self-deluded. I crushed the letter into a ball in my palm. Then I gently lifted Ava in front of me and touched the center of her forehead with my index finger. From now on, your name will be Emma. Chapter 22. Willow's side story. I sat in the car, quietly running my fingers over my phone. On the screen was my chat history with George. I had written, hubby, there's a business matter at the company. I need to go abroad for a while. George replied him, I know. It's colder down there than at home. Make sure you wear more layers. Other than that, no more messages came from George. I read his message over and over again. Lately his texts seemed to have lost their warmth. In the past, there had never been a single typo in the messages he sent me. But this time he had written down there, instead of outside. In the distance, Makoto was already walking toward me with his suitcase in tow. I did not know whether this decision was right or wrong. Just once. I would lie to George just this once. The thought repeated itself in my mind. Once I accompanied Makoto abroad and helped him get treatment, I would have repaid him for saving my life. After that, I would never see him again. Never again. Willow. Makoto's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. "This is my first time riding in such an expensive car," he said. As I watched him settle into the front passenger seat, a strange tremor suddenly passed through my heart. My lips parted, but in the end I said nothing. "Willow, what's wrong?" Seeing me lost in thought, Makoto waved his hand in front of my eyes. His smile was pure, his face brimming with confidence. I frowned. "How many times have I told you call me Freya?" Makoto froze for a moment. "Why, Freya, that was right. Why did I insist that he call me Freya, my pen name? Perhaps it was only by doing this that I could separate the person I was now from George's wife. But why did I need to separate them? The thought that had surfaced in my mind frightened me, and my face suddenly went pale. At that moment, I wanted to throw Makoto out of the car and rush back to George without caring about anything else. Cough, cough. Makoto covered his chest and coughed twice. "Freya, I'm really sorry for causing you so much trouble." His eyes were still bright, but his complexion was gray and sickly. Makoto took out a cigarette and placed it between his lips. I frowned slightly. "You're already this ill. Why haven't you quit smoking, heh?" Makoto turned to look at me. "Freya, I'm already like this. What difference does it make whether I live one more day or one less, huh?" He patted his pockets. "I forgot my lighter again." Freya is always so thoughtful. As though it were the most natural thing in the world, he opened my handbag and took out a lighter. "You prepared this for Mr. Wong, didn't you? I really envy him for having such a wonderful wife like you." At Makoto's words, my fingers tightened uneasily around the steering wheel. A wonderful wife, could a woman who carried a lighter for another man truly call herself a wonderful wife? Chapter 23. The Airport Expressway. There was little traffic today, and I sped down the road. Freya. Makoto cautiously leaned closer to me. "You've barely said a word this entire drive." It's nothing." I imperceptibly shrank closer to the car door. "I haven't been driving for very long. I can't afford to get distracted." It sounded as though I were explaining myself to Makoto, but in truth even I could not make sense of the thoughts churning inside me. Ding! My phone chimed with a new message. Ignoring how fast I was driving, I hurriedly opened it. "Willow Lou." George's voice came through the phone, and an overwhelming sense of panic suddenly surged through me. How long had it been since he last called me by my full name? "You." George spoke, slowly enunciating every word. "You knew exactly what you were doing, and yet you still chose to fall." My entire body began trembling uncontrollably. What did he mean? What was George trying to say? An answer was already taking shape in the depths of my mind, but I did not dare touch it. My instincts were screaming a warning at me. The moment I acknowledged that answer, my entire world would collapse. I pressed the accelerator down even harder. I was not going abroad anymore. I was not accompanying Makoto for treatment anymore. I would drop him off at the airport and turn around immediately. I needed to see George. I had to see him as soon as possible. Chapter 24. Honk, honk. A piercing horn blared outside the window. The shadow of a towering vehicle fell across my face. My entire body tensed only to go limp the next second as I collapsed against the seat. The light faded from my eyes. I knew that massive vehicle all too well. It was the first car George had bought in college. He had once driven me across snow-capped mountains and endless grasslands and along the coast with the sea stretching beside us. After we got married, he had carefully restored it before locking it away in the garage. He said the car had witnessed too many of our happiest memories. Its journey was over, and now it was time for him to shoulder the responsibilities of a family. He could no longer take me on reckless adventures. The window of the Raptor rolled down. I lifted my head and met a pair of lifeless ashen eyes. My heart felt as though it had been seized in an iron grip. My lips trembled and my hands and feet turned ice cold. I had seen that look in George's eyes once before. It was 15 years ago. George had stood on the edge of a rooftop, his body swaying dangerously. I had desperately grabbed him, held him tight, and told him, "Gio, from now on I'll be your family." Makoto seemed to be shouting something at me from the passenger seat. But I could no longer hear anything. I took both hands off the steering wheel. When the impact came, I felt an unexpected trace of relief. The world spun around me. I simply sat there in a daze, waiting for the end. One of my arms seemed to have bent backward, yet strangely I felt no pain. Without blinking, I tilted my head and stared at the shadow of the raptor. It roared once more and charged toward me. I struggled to raise my hand, wanting to touch it just once. But it pulled away again, leaving me coughing up a mouthful of blood. Again and again it roared, surged forward, then retreated. Yet I never managed to lift my hand high enough to touch it. At last George appeared. I turned my face toward him and stared without moving. I did not dare move. I could not move. And now I was no longer capable of moving. I could no longer feel my body. I watched George pull out a cigarette with trembling fingers and light it. I watched the tip glow and dim as he exhaled a practiced stream of white smoke. I did not dare wonder when George had learned to smoke. Merely brushing against that thought was enough to tear my heart apart. George leaned against the badly mangled hood and smoked slowly, one drag after another, carefully savoring every last bit of the cigarette until nothing remained. He looked at me with quiet indifference and said softly, "Didn't I tell you it's cold down there? Wear something warm." So it had not been a typo. Willow, don't make promises so easily in your next life. What if someone is as foolish as I was and actually believes you? I desperately tried to open my mouth. I wanted to beg George not to say my name in such a cold voice. But in the end I could not do it. The Zippo danced between George's long fingers, its metal casing catching the sunlight and reflecting a flash of gold into my eyes. "So you knew everything all along." I watched George raise his hand and toss that glimmer of gold through the air. "No." I desperately tried to make a sound. I wanted to beg the heavens to give George a chance to live. I was not worth it. A woman like me was not worth dying for. As the flames swept toward us, my final thought was, "George, the first hope you never meet me again in your next life." Chapter 25. Side story. Willow, over here at the entrance to the mall. My friend stood on tiptoe, waving both hands at me. "I haven't seen you in 2 years. You didn't even come back for the holidays." She took my hand and complained. "Oh my." She looked me up and down. "You've gotten even prettier. Are you seeing anyone? Has George found someone yet?" My friend had always been lively and energetic. Once she started talking, the words came out like machine gun fire, and she did not stop the entire way. I smiled and shook my head. She narrowed her eyes. "No way. You still haven't met anyone you like? It's been almost 3 years since you graduated from college." I linked my arm through hers and laughed. "Why are you in such a hurry? You're even more anxious about it than my mother." I had never been particularly interested in dating. It was not as though I had not met exceptional, captivating men over the years. But whenever they tried to take our relationship a step further, I would instinctively pull away. Deep down I had a thought that I had never shared with anyone. It felt as though I were searching for someone. Someone I had never met yet, whose existence I believed in with absolute certainty. Whoosh! Suddenly a small figure ran past me, giggling as she held an ice cream cone in the air. Careful, just as the little girl slipped and was about to fall, I instinctively caught her raised hand. The ice cream slipped from her grasp, smeared across my sleeve, then fell to the floor. "Oh!" The little girl's eyes immediately turned red. She looked at my stained sleeve, then at the ice cream on the ground. After swallowing hard, she still spoke softly. "Miss, I'm sorry. I got your clothes dirty." "It's all right." I crouched down and gently ruffled her hair. Her eyes were large, and she was so rosy-cheeked and adorable that anyone would have wanted to kiss her. "Sweetheart, what's your name? Where are your mommy and daddy?" I smiled and looked into her eyes. They were so beautiful that I could not stop staring at them. The little girl bit her index finger and tilted her head in thought. Then her gaze moved past my shoulder, and she suddenly called out happily, "Daddy." Chapter 26. Emma, you're being naughty again. A warm voice, trying its best to sound stern, came from behind me. The little girl stuck out her tongue and hid her face against my chest. "I'm sorry," the man said. "She caused you trouble." "It's fine. Really, it's nothing." As I spoke, I turned around. Standing before me was a tall man with a light gray trench coat draped casually over his shoulders. There was something cool and aloof about him. Yet the pink water bottle slung across his shoulder and the unmistakably feminine handbag in his hand added an incongruous touch of gentleness to his appearance. The moment I saw him, I froze. The vague silhouette that had surfaced countless times in the depths of my mind had suddenly taken shape before my eyes. "You." I instantly lost my composure. My tongue tied itself into knots and I could not get another word out. The next second my friend exclaimed in delight, "Oh George, what are you doing here?" The man lowered his eyes. After taking a second to search his memory, he smiled. "Laura, we met in the student council back in college, didn't we?" "Oh my God," my friend almost jumped for joy. "You still remember me? What brings you here? Is this your little girl? Is she your daughter with Anna Laura?" Feeling embarrassed, I instinctively tugged at my friend's hand. The man remained calm and good-natured throughout, smiling at her. "You made quite an impression back then, Laura." A teasing smile crossed his face. "My family is originally from here, but I moved to another province with my parents when I was very young." He answered each of her questions in an orderly manner. "Anna and I brought our daughter here for the holidays so she could see the town where I was born." He lowered his head and looked at the little girl hiding behind me. "This is my daughter Emma." His gaze shifted to the stain on my sleeve. He turned to me apologetically. "I'm sorry she caused you trouble." My friend linked her arm through mine and said cheerfully, "Let me introduce you. Willow, this is George Wong, an upperclassman from my college, and the guy I had the biggest crush on back then." She openly reminisced about her youthful infatuation. "George, this is my friend Willow Lu." George bent down and picked up the little girl before apologizing to me again. "Ms. Lu, I'm sorry. Please let me pay for your clothes." "No, there's no need." I gripped my sleeve tightly as an indescribable emotion spread through my chest. "It'll come off with a quick wipe. You really don't need to feel so guilty." I looked at George and unconsciously took a step closer, only to abruptly come to my senses. What was I doing? What was I doing approaching a married man like this? I steadied my breathing. Your daughter is adorable. Mr. Wong, goodbye." I nodded to George, grabbed my friend, who was still reluctant to leave, and practically fled without looking back. Chapter 27. My friend pouted. "Hey, don't drag me away. I still want to look at George a little longer." She kept muttering under her breath, repeatedly glancing back with obvious reluctance. From the corner of my eye, I saw a woman with long hair draped over her shoulders walk toward him. She looked as gentle and beautiful as a painting. The two exchanged a few words with smiles on their faces, and the woman linked her arm through his. He carried their daughter while she held onto his arm, and the family of three turned and walked away together. "Anna really is so gentle. I can't compete with that at all." My friend finally looked away with a wistful sigh. "I'm so jealous of her." When she noticed the questioning look in my eyes, her melancholy vanished in an instant. She grinned and said, "Had you listened to me back then and gone to college down south, perhaps you and George would be the ones walking together now." I may not be as pretty as Anna, but my best friend is every bit as beautiful as she is." Then she pinched my cheek in frustration. "This is all your fault. You refused to listen to me and insisted on going north. Now I don't even have an excuse to get close to George anymore." I rolled my eyes at her, but my fingers slowly rubbed the stained cuff of my sleeve. My friend held out a wet wipe. "Here, wipe it off." "No." I gripped my sleeve, slipped my hand into my pocket, and avoided her help. For some reason, I did not want to erase that mark at all. I had a feeling that this chance encounter would be the only time in my life that my path ever crossed with a man named George. An inexplicable pain suddenly seized my heart, and tears began streaming down my face without warning. In the middle of the crowded mall, I forgot all about appearances. I crouched down and burst into uncontrollable sobs. At the age of 25, I had fallen hopelessly in love, only to have my heart broken before it had even begun.